India has become the latest and largest country to introduce a nationwide lockdown in the fight against the coronavirus. Its population of 1.3 billion has been told to stay at home. The country has so far seen about 560 confirmed cases and 11 deaths. And there are fears that infections could spread quickly in densely populated urban areas. Crowds formed at pharmacies and shops shortly before the midnight deadline. Non-essential businesses have been closed, and most flights and rail services have been stopped. And the busy Bollywood film industry has ground to a halt. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said without the 21-day lockdown, the country could be set back 21 years. So let's join DW correspondent Nimisha Jaiswal in Delhi. Welcome, Nimisha. Are people abiding by these new restrictions?
Well, Phil, to a large extent, yes. People have not been coming out on the streets as much as they normally would have. The Sunday voluntary curfew was hugely successful with reports of millions staying put. It's not quite as empty on the streets right now because people are allowed to step out to get essential services, but there are police checkpoints across the city that are preventing people who are not either rendering or accessing essential services from stepping out. However, it is also important to think about the fact that there are many amongst the urban poor who are actually trying to get back home. Now, transport services are largely shut down, buses, trains, as well as flights. However, many are still trying to make their way back to their home states because they're daily wage earners and they cannot sustain themselves. They cannot afford life in the city anymore. And we went to find out how exactly these people are managing walking large distances in their efforts to get home even though borders are closed. This is the report.
These people are violating a lockdown. Delhi has closed its borders. No buses, trains, or flights can leave. Yet, these migrant workers are determined to get home. Many earn just a daily wage. And with businesses shut, they cannot afford life in the city anymore. With public transport reduced, Devraj has walked many kilometers with his family, putting them at risk of exposure. He's scared, but he says he has no option.
They aren't letting me work. That's the problem. I have young children. They're hungry. Who do I ask for help? We've been struggling for 4 days.
The Delhi government has announced some relief measures for the poor. But these workers don't feel reassured.
I can wait to find out if the government will give me money, but how am I supposed to eat until then? And what if they don't?
Away from the bus stop, the city lies deserted. Those who can afford to are staying home. Checkpoints like this one have been established across the city. The police is ensuring that only those who are rendering essential services are allowed to be out. The government has also said that violators of the lockdown can face legal action. Grocery stores remain open. Some are only allowing a limited number of shoppers in. This one says masks are necessary, as is sanitizing your hands before entering. India has been paralyzed by these measures, but health experts are throwing their weight behind the lockdown.
If India can fight this together for 2 weeks, we definitely would have prevented the curve from going up and made it flat. All that we need to do is to prevent the curve from going the Italy way. Because if that happens in India, the results will be much worse than what happened in Italy.
The Indian Prime Minister has appealed to migrant workers to stay put and avoid infecting their families back home. But for many, that risk is far more distant than being trapped away from home during this lockdown.
Nimisha, the poor always suffer worst in these crises. Tell us more about how the government is trying to help these migrant workers.
Well, Phil, the government has formed an economic task force with the finance minister at its helm to find out exactly what would be the best route forward to address the economic crisis that is sure to beset the country as a result of this lockdown. Just yesterday, some regulatory and fiscal measures were announced. In addition, the government has asked all states to send funds to add money to the bank accounts of construction workers, one of the main constituents of the daily wage workers, but they are not the the only ones, and we would have to wait and see how exactly the government is going to ensure that in the midst of a lockdown, officials can still make their way out and ensure that these daily wage workers and the poorest of the poor in the country are continuing to get meals and sustenance during this lockdown.
Thanks for that, Nimisha Jaiswal in Delhi.